With that, I want to welcome Dan Hobbs to the 50 So Are You on this call. And thanks again, Dan, for being here. So you're on and feel free to share whenever you want.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Darren. Yeah, the secret is the siesta. All right, I'm a lifelong believer in a good siesta. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was just delightful to have this opportunity. We love peppers. We started with garlic on our farm, northern New Mexico, and then when we moved up to Pueblo in the year 2000, of course, with all the chili lore, we quickly started growing Pueblo chilies. I think I better turn off my video. We've got a very unstable internet connection here in the county, so let's do that. And we'll do the screen share here. All right, here we go. And Darren, I didn't know you had roots in the Pueblo area. That's wonderful. So these are actually Pueblo chili here. It's a Mirasol variety. And I really recently have been enjoying starting these presentations by just giving thanks and recognizing all the great farmers and cooperators that have come before us. And here where we're located in Pueblo County, this was Arapaho, Kiowa, Cheyenne, Comanche, and Ute country, actually also Jicarilla Apache. We had the Arapaho and Cheyenne mostly on the north side of the Arkansas River and the Comanche on the south side of the river. We don't currently have any of these tribes in the area now, but it's sure important to remember them. We've got lots of teepee rings and artifacts all over the countryside here. We're located about 17 miles east of Pueblo, near the confluence of the Huerfano and the Arkansas rivers. These were really the first commercial farms in the state. We're located here and also in the area of San Luis, in the San Luis Valley. These were merchants mostly on the Santa Fe Trail, and they were providing a wide range of vegetables and grains and livestock products to the miners that came into the region during the Cripple Creek, Pikes Peak gold rush. And there's actually journal accounts of a pepper that grows up from the Doyle settlement in the late 1850s. And of course, some of us know the Mirasol, which means looks at the sun, is the Pueblo chili. And so it's possible that it's been grown in this region since the 1850s. This is our farm is called Hobbs and Meyer Farms, and then this Pueblo Seed and Food Company is our DBA. It's our kind of public facing company. We sell varietal seed locally, some garden centers on the internet. We also contract with a lot of national seed companies, and pepper seed is one of our specialties, along with onion seed, carrot seed, and a few other things. So that's just an image of one of our seed packets there. Kind of an unfortunate name for that pepper when we were trying to sell it last year, but a lovely orange bell pepper that's one of the finest open pollinated bell peppers out there. Okay, I want to launch into this presentation just with a quick review of some terms. And maybe I'll also just take a step back and say I've organized this presentation to talk a little bit about pepper history, followed by some growing tips, and then some botanical information, and then I'm going to finish it up with some seed saving techniques. So this is just setting the stage. Our seed production here is fully open pollinated. Okay, you can read the definition there. These are plants that are pollinated by insects or wind, and will breed true to type, grow true to type if you grow them out in your garden. All heirlooms, for example, would be by definition open pollinated. Hybrid varieties, otherwise known as F1s, these are will not grow true to type if you plant them out. Cultivars, stable variety, these could be open pollinated or hybrid. Stabilized varieties bred for select characteristics. There's your generally recognized definition of heirloom. Community grown, handed down, usually 100 years seems to be the common definition for an heirloom. And then landrace. We're going to get into landrace peppers here in a couple of slides. This is a great term, and it conveys genetic diversity in the population of plants. And it also means a plant that's adapted to a particular environment. This presentation is largely about the Capsicum annum. There's 5 species of domesticated peppers. This is the most common one. These are your jalapenos, all your chili peppers, your bell peppers, your Italian frying peppers. This is by far the largest group of domesticated peppers. And then finally, the Scoville scale. This is how they rate pungency or level of spice with peppers. And so you see there, bell pepper has 0 Scovilles. A jalapeno is in that 8,000 range. Poblano, pasilla, pretty mild at 2,000 Scovilles. I just love this slide that identifies the centers of origin. Botanist in, gosh, I think it was the early 1900s, Vavilov, basically charted this. There's 7 to 8 centers of domesticated plant diversity around the world. You can see in North America, we've got a very paltry number of plants. You know, we've got blueberries and sunflowers and a couple of other things. The center of origin for peppers is Mesoamerica, South America, and the Caribbean. Now, this is pretty interesting background information here. This represents the wild capsicums in the Americas. And it's just fascinating for me to look down here in Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia. That really appears to be the cradle of wild peppers. And so we assume that peppers probably diversified peppers anyway, made their way out of South America and up through the trade routes and into Mesoamerica. Peppers have been domesticated now for about 6,000 years. Okay, now this came to my attention a number of years ago. I just always associated the Southwest, of course, with peppers, and figured they were grown by the Puebloans, but indeed there are no peppers in the archaeological record of the Southwest. I think I read at one point that they found like a seed or a grain of pollen at Casas Grandes down on the Mexican border, but nothing to be found anywhere in Mexico, Arizona, or Colorado. So apparently when the Spanish came into Mexico, they immediately started eating peppers. And so it was with some of these early colonists that came up into New Mexico that the peppers came. So this guy, Juan de Oñate, some of you may know the statue of him in Española was torn down this past year, but he was often referred to as the last conquistador. And so peppers were pretty quickly adopted by the Puebloans in the Rio Grande Valley, and have of course been grown ever since the late 1500s in New Mexico. So this, my friend Chuck Havlick, who's a pepper expert at New Mexico State University at the Los Lunas station, dug up this last fact here and thinks that it might have even come before Oñate to the area. Okay, so that's a little bit of background, and gee, you know, when I was thanking the tribes, the local tribes and the farmers and the cooperators, I should have also been thanking all the South American and Mesoamerican tribes that gave us these wonderful food plants. So let's move into growing tips now. I know probably a lot of you folks, especially in La Plata County, are at slightly high elevations. So some of you are kind of in marginal pepper country. And so I've tried to gear some of my remarks here to help you along your way. And it's extremely important, you know, that you you understand your climate constraints, and that you select your varieties based on your constraints and your opportunities, let's say. The biggest challenge for growing peppers tends to be cool nights. And so that's kind of what you're up against. There's certain varieties like habaneros, poblanos, serranos, that are going to be very tough to grow at elevation. And in fact, even here in Pueblo County, where we're at about 45, 50. That's our elevation here. We are just kind of on the edge of poblano and serrano country. So those are just maturing red right at the end of the season. It's often a real squeaker to get them out of the field. So, there's certain things that unless you've got a really interesting microclimate, that you probably don't want to fool with. But that said, there's also a variety of cultivars that could work. Maybe you could find a poblano that's adapted to higher elevation, or if you're adventuresome, maybe you could try to adapt your own. And over time, maybe one plant would survive and 10 would die, and you start selecting off that one, and eventually you've got an adapted poblano plant for elevation. So I don't want to discourage anybody from trying things on their property. On farm variety trials is incredibly important, because every farm, as we know, and every garden is very individual, has its own characteristics, its own possibilities. Some of the things I look for in pepper varieties is plant canopy. Because of the intense solar action that we have in southern Colorado, a lot of more leggy pepper plants tend to produce burnt fruits. You'll see these, these spots appear. And, when I first saw that, I thought, well, gosh, maybe I'm overwatering it, or some kind of disease, but in fact, there's sunburns. And so there's one pepper, a bell pepper in particular, called King of the North, that we years ago contracted a lot for the Fedco seed company in Maine. And they really liked it because it was a quick maturing bell pepper, really good for the northern tier states, and a fine pepper, great, tasty, large, but there was no appreciable leaf canopy on that variety. And so we lost, gosh, 40, 50% of the peppers, it seemed like, from those plants. So when I'm selecting a variety, I am often looking at the plant canopy. Days to maturity, of course, very important. And again, we're going to talk more about land races, but some of these New Mexican landrace peppers are adapted to elevation. And that is something to really think about if you're, in that 6,000 to 7,000 foot zone. Okay, transplanting. So this is basically the time. We're coming into the window right now. We like to start our pepper plants in late March. And we put them out, of course, after frost. And here that's usually about June 1st, May 15th to June 1st is our transplanting window. Yeah, this is just, pretty intuitive, raising healthy plants. Peppers like a rich soil. But we like our plants to kind of work for a living. And one of the things we've been selecting for in our seed program is plants that are scavenging for nutrients. And so we don't like to overfeed them. On a garden scale, probably some of your home gardens are pretty rich and well composted, but for some of us that are, farming on a kind of a larger scale, doing that kind of intensive composting is a little bit more challenging. And so we kind of like having them be a little bit hungry and have them work for their living. And the same goes for the watering. We are flood irrigators over here in Pueblo. We irrigate every 9th and 10th day, and we soak them very deep, and then we let them dry out. And that's really producing kind of some drought hardy strains of peppers. Some of the diseases that you might see in the pepper field, and most commonly, are the bacterial leaf spots and then mosaic viruses. Gosh, these can be transmitted by insects, they can be soil borne, they can be seed borne. Same rule applies for tomato plants, right? Tobacco mosaic virus can affect peppers. And so, being sanitary with your plants and seeds is pretty important. And then, so, one thing I'm not touching on in this presentation is nutrition and culinary information. We don't have enough time, but I just love cooking with peppers. And so I lament that we can't go down that road, but maybe another day, Darren. So the thing I do want to draw to your attention though about peppers is there is something very special in our climate that happens in the month of September. Okay, so we have these hot days in July and August, lots of sunshine. And then in September, when those nights start to cool off, that's when these peppers really develop the deep flavors. And so this is the kind of the best kept secret in the world is the red Pueblo chilies are the absolute bomb. You just cannot, you cannot eat a better pepper than a Pueblo chili in the month of September. And by the way, all green peppers are on their way to some other color, right? A green pepper, whether it's a bell pepper or a chili pepper, is just an immature pepper. And so those flavors, are a little bit underdeveloped. As that fruit matures and becomes purple or red or orange, that's when they're really going to develop a full spectrum of flavors. So when people, a lot of people in Pueblo will rush to get their Pueblo chili when it's pure green, and green chili is better than no chili, right? But I always counsel my friends and neighbors to wait until the month of September and buy their chili when you can get a mix of the red and green together.
Hey Dan, just real quick, when you transplant out, like what? I mean, those of us who are trying to grow peppers indoors, they know they tend to be slow to grow out. Like, is there
Yeah.
a certain size you're looking for or certain leaf stage when you guys transplant out?
Yeah, we've transplanted at all different kinds of sizes and stages. So I would say, for us, really, it's just we plant when we've got water because of our water rotation here. But we put in plants as small as an inch tall to 5 inches tall. And, because of the long growing season, even those small guys will make it. I think, like where you guys are, this is maybe, more of a concern when you've got an earlier frost. So, it might be advantageous to have a bigger plant to put in. Yeah, I'm going to say yes, probably have, a 3, 4, 5 inch plant to transplant, in somewhere like Dolores. The other thing, and we'll talk about this here in a minute too, is the direct seeded chilies. Some of these land races from New Mexico are have some cold hardiness to them. And when you direct seed your peppers before the last frost, they can withstand some cool soil and they set down a much better root system. And so there's some real advantages to trying to direct seed your peppers. But again, it's going to be a little bit trial and error at these higher elevations, and variety is going to play an important role too. Okay, so here's an example from Jemez Pueblo. Gosh, I didn't actually look up the elevation of Jemez. I think it might be 6,500, something like that. It's north of Albuquerque, right? It's in the Jemez Mountains there. These guys will plant several seeds per hole. And, so there's two things that happen there. The multiple seeds can help break through soil crust, but also if you've got poor germination rates on your pepper, having multiple seeds is going to ensure that you have a plant. And then, typically you'd go in later and you'd thin those plants out to just 1 or 2. So again, some of these northern New Mexico land races are adapted to elevation, and a lot of these traditional Hispano and Puebloan growers still direct seed their chili. So transplanting, is great to get a jump on things, but you'll see that your plants often will lean. If you get some wind events, they just do not put down the same root structure that a direct seeded plant will have. So you're going to have a much stronger plant in the field if it's direct seeded. Okay. All right. So I want to now, should I pause for a quick minute? Any other questions about transplanting or planting, Darren? Anything you want me to cover there?
I think someone asked about topping. I don't know if you're going to get to cultural practices later in the season for peppers, but someone asked about topping the plant to create bushing. Do you guys do that?
No, nope. We have never done that. And part of it is just a reflection of scale. We grow about 2 acres of peppers, and it's a lot of plants, and it's kind of impractical to do that. But the peppers that we like to grow really, again, have they're bushy by nature and have these incredible canopies, like that Corona bell pepper that was featured on our seed packet there. That is one of those bells that's got a lovely canopy, and also the Pueblo chili too. There's just minimal sunburning, and they're squat by nature. So no, that's not something I've ever done. And in fact, I don't know anybody in the pepper growing community out here that practices that.
Yeah, and so Chris, I've never done that as a home gardener to top them. I'm always afraid to remove any sort of canopy just because of the sunburn nature of peppers. So I tend to let them go as big as they want to be. Another question, Dan, maybe on that last slide from the Jimenez, it said maybe that direct seeding that they're planted with, include with bean seed. Can you talk about that first bullet?
Yeah. I don't, I guess, this is kind of might be a tradition that's similar to the milpa, right? Like to a Three Sister garden of corn, squash, and beans. I think the chili was never really part of the original Mesoamerican milpa. But it seems like it's become that way in the Southwest. So, what the function is there, I can't say for sure. Of course, in milpa farming, it was usually nitrogen, right? They used the bean for some extra nitrogen fixation. And this works great, Darren. If you want to keep monitoring the chat and just,
Sure.
stop me as we go along, that's great. Anything else for now?
Let me get back to it. There's something about what temperature should soil be for direct seeding. I don't know if you know the answer. I know it has to be at least 60 degrees.
Yeah, that is what I was going to say too. Again, I think like some of these New Mexican varieties, they can even withstand a little bit of frost when they're up out of the ground. So they'll take some cooler temperatures. But of course, the warmer the temperature of the soil, the better. And this is that decision is also going to be impacted by when your first frost usually is, and do you have enough data to make it to to a nice finished pepper.
I would just say for many of us here down in Southwest, where we're about 6,000 to 7,000 feet or higher in elevation, I think you're better off doing the transplant route just for safety rates. But and it's just our clay soils tend to stay so cool in the spring and early summer just because they hold water. So if you are going to try direct seeding, I would hopefully you can do it on a sandier soil or raise your bed up just to get that soil to warm up after it dries out.
Yeah, and on that note, I might be like at that 6,000 to 7,000 foot range, I might be inclined to direct seed May 15, May 20, something like that, if I had a variety that I thought had a fighting chance. And then and then your transplants would go in, with your other tender stuff, right? Your squash.
Yeah, I'm always looking for someone to prove me wrong. I tell everybody to direct seed peppers and tomatoes. I would love to see somebody around here. I mean, unless that makes me really scared about climate change, but I would be very interested to see if anybody could do a direct seeding. But that's what we love about science.
Yep. Cool. And again, these New Mexico varieties are the ones to look at for that, I think, because that's how those farmers have been doing it in the Sangre de Cristos, for hundreds of years. Okay, so this is just a slide to as we start to move into seed saving part of this presentation. I just wanted folks to know that peppers are self-pollinating crops. But they do cross a little bit. And so if you are growing multiple peppers and you want to save seed, basically it's a minimum of 300 feet between varieties. And for example, if you want to grow a sweet pepper and a hot pepper in the same farm, or the same garden, and you have them at less than 300 feet, you're probably asking for trouble. Because the insects will transfer that pollen around, and the hot peppers tend to be a little more promiscuous than the sweet peppers. They'll cross more readily and over a little further distance. So 500 is for sure safe. 300, I think, is what they say in the books, as a minimum. Now, stuff down there like on the end, like peas and lettuce, you could have multiple varieties of those side by side and be able to save seed without concern of cross-pollination. Now, on the other side, the outcrossing or outbreeding crops, umbels would be, your fennel, your onion seed, leek seed, carrot seed, stuff like that, and then corn. So these are, they're all different kinds of pollinators, wind or insects. But just as we get into the seed saving stuff, this is pretty important information. On the squash, for example, we grow a lot of squash for national seed companies, and we try to have a mile isolation. We coordinate with our neighbors, and we grow a lot of zucchini, as Costata Romanesco variety, and so there's pumpkin, jack-o'-lantern pumpkin growers, same species around here, and so we have to coordinate with the neighbors to make sure we don't end up with pumpkin in our zucchini. Okay, so there's just for the botanical nerds in the group, peppers have these perfect flowers, and there's a list of some other crops that have perfect flowers and are self-pollinators. Okay, and so just kind of, I really want to encourage folks to try seed saving with peppers. If you're inclined, if you have the time, and I just think there's something really important about it, trying to adapt seeds to your growing climate and to your conditions. A lot of the seed that you get from these national seed companies, is grown in prime seed growing regions like the coast of Oregon, the Willamette Valley of Oregon. A lot of it comes out of European seed houses. Some of it even comes from China. It's a little difficult. Many of these seed catalogs are not very transparent with where the seed originates. And so it's hard to determine if you've got something that's going to work with your climate. But if you're saving that seed yourself, it's a whole nother story. So, and it is not difficult to save seed from peppers and tomatoes, for example. So I just thought this was kind of interesting, this International Plant Treaty of 2001 that declares farmers' rights. This became an issue when, Monsanto and Bayer and, what is it, four mega companies own 60% of the world's horticultural seed. And then, we've lost an incredible amount of biodiversity, in these modern times. And so I think this kind of came out of that modern climate, affirming that the past, present, and future contributions of farmers in all regions of the world, particularly in the centers of origin and diversity, that's that slide we saw early on, the 7 or 8 centers, and conserving, improving, and making available these resources is the basis of farmers' rights. And farmers have the right to save, use, exchange, and sell farm-saved seed and propagating materials. All right, so let's get into the good stuff here. I'm just a total fanatic about these landrace crops here, and most of my slides relate to the hot peppers, but basically everything I'm talking about with respect to the hot peppers applies to the sweet peppers as well. So I hope we don't feel like they're getting the cold shoulder here. Again, they're all capsicum annum. On the left is the famous Chimayo chili pepper. And some of you guys have probably heard these great pepper debates between Pueblo and Hatch and the New Mexico, Colorado chili wars. It has been focused on the Pueblo chili and the Hatch, but interestingly, all these wonderful varieties from northern New Mexico were kind of left out of the debate. And so that Chimayo, I am pretty sure is descended from a pasilla pepper. And those pasillas are very mild, long peppers, thin-walled. They're also called, when they're dry, they're called chile negro or chilaca. And those peppers are part of the holy trinity of Mexican cuisine. Okay, Mirasol peppers, ancho peppers, and pasilla peppers are the three most commonly consumed peppers in Mexico. And the Chimayo looks a lot like that pasilla. That's a very thin-walled pepper. It is not a roasting pepper. Those are for drying. And these are the ones you commonly see in ristras and chili powders, really bright red chili powders. And that Chimayo region actually does not grow so many peppers anymore. It's becoming a little bit rare. And I guess I would say that's, a little bit of the case all over northern New Mexico. Chili production has dropped, and originally those were really subsistence pepper farms. They weren't production farms. The production farms were down south in that Mesilla Valley, that Hatch area. Now on the right is the Pueblo chili. That's a Mirasol. When it's dried, it's called a guajillo. Again, one of those part of the holy trinity of Mexican cuisine. And so these the genetics of these Mirasols apparently traced to Oaxaca in southern Mexico. And they, again, we don't know exactly how they got to Pueblo, but we think they got here possibly as early as the late 1850s, but certainly by the early 1900s. We have a very accomplished Sicilian, Italian farming community in Pueblo County, and it's mostly the Italian farmers that started growing the Pueblo chili in the early 1900s. And so they've really kept that tradition going. And maybe some of you have been to the Pueblo Chili and Frijoles Festival. And if you haven't, it's really, it's something to experience. It's just one of Colorado's great events. So that is a classic roasting pepper there, okay? And contrasting it with that drying pepper there, the Pueblo chili is designed for roasting. It's very thick meated. If you try to roast that Chimayo chili, it's gonna scorch through the skin and you're not gonna have anything to eat, or very little to eat. So this is Fabian Garcia. He is basically the father of modern New Mexico chili. And he was based down at New Mexico State, and he developed this New Mexico #9 as the first pod type chili that eventually gave rise to the Hatch chili industry. And so that New Mexico #9 was actually descended from those pasillas that we just talked about. So he apparently had 9 or so strains of that pasilla. He just started crossing them, stabilizing a cultivar, and released that #9 as kind of the first improved chili. Now, when we talk about crop improvement, there's a big difference here between classical plant breeding and crop improvement and hybridizing or genetically modifying. Okay, so this is classical plant breeding here is what Garcia was doing. Hybrids were around by this time, by the way. The first hybrids came out in about 1910 with the hybridization of corn. But these are all open pollinated chilies that he was working with. And so these common modern ones are Sandia, Big Jim, and Anaheim. And then here, this last note is just, again, to just contrast the landrace peppers that we saw there in that previous slide, like that are grown up in the Sangre de Cristos, and then these big fat pod types in the Mesilla Valley. So this is the these pod types are the ones that are the basis of this chili debate with the Pueblos, and they are also roasting peppers. So this is, I'm going to just tell you the story of Pueblo chili, how it came about. You know, we talked a little bit about its history, Mirasol pepper, genetics in Oaxaca, you know, grown along the Santa Fe Trail here in Pueblo County. Mike Bartolo is a well-known CSU. Well, he runs the Rocky Ford Research Station. He's a colleague of Darren's, and he's been down there for many years and done a lot of incredible things in Rocky Ford and in fact across the state. He's retiring this year. And Darren, I got to tell you, I was so, you know, I had to go run down to Rocky Ford to get some pasture seed. And because of this presentation, it just prompted me to connect with him. And I was so glad to do that, you know, before he retires. And, you know, with COVID and stuff, not many people have been stopping by the research station. And so I'd spent an hour with Mike and we just talked peppers, and it was just so much damn fun. So Mike is one of these classic old school plant breeders that existed like in the time of Abraham Lincoln, right? I mean, when the agricultural service was first developed on a federal level in the United States, that seed was released into the public domain. You know, you had these crop improvement associations coupled with these land grant universities, and they developed these locally adapted varieties, and they released them to the farmers for the farm community's benefit. So Mike did the same thing here with this Moscow, and I don't know if, you know, if CSU's super pleased about it. They'd probably love to get some royalties from the Moscow, but Mike turned it over to the benefit of the community. And it's gosh, I don't know. I think 2 years ago, I heard that the Pueblo chili is now a $7 million industry. And so, you know, he just did something really special for this area. And, you know, something that's just got so much history and culture and flavor tied up in it. And it's just a real success story. So again, this is just last week down at the Rocky Ford Research Station, and Mike pulled out his boxes of seed there, and he has 400 some sessions of pepper lines. You know, he's been working on all of these different pepper varieties, mostly hot, you know, iterations of the Pueblo chili. He's got a new hotter Pueblo chili called the Jidon. Jidon was a prominent farming family in the Pueblo area. He's got some Italian Marconis, some beautiful sweet stuffing peppers, some little Pueblo poppers, he calls them, hot jalapeno kind of peppers, some ornamentals. You know, just the guy has just done some amazing work with peppers. And so, you know, his legacy is gonna last for a very long time in Southern Colorado. And you know, and the Pueblo chili has just become central actually to our farm business, you know, in our seed enterprise. It's the #1 seller. You know, we send Pueblo chili all over the country, especially this time of year during seed season. So Mike gave me some stock seed for a few things. And so I'm looking forward to growing those out. But that's it. That's the godfather of Pueblo chili right there, Dr. Mike Bartolo. Okay, so we're going to shift into seed processing now. I'll give you guys just a couple of tips. I guess I'll start with just that slide on the right. Those are the chimayos at our farm from this last year. And again, that's a thin meated pepper. You know, the traditional thing in New Mexico is you dry those in the open air, dry them all the way down, and then you take the seeds out, and then you can crush up the rest of the pepper for your chili powder. You know, just put it in your coffee grinder or whatever. So that's how we handled drying our chimayo chili, just on big tables in our high tunnel. And then on the left, I'm going to show you the wet seed process for extracting seed for peppers. So this is actually a video here. And we've got, annually, we get a bunch of Colorado College students that and alumni of Colorado College that come down and help out during pepper time. And so they're operating a little machine called a millet thresher. And this little thresher is used for eggplant, peppers, and tomatoes. And those are all known as wet seeded crops, okay? Crops that have the seed on the inside of the fruit, cucumbers and squash, and melons would also be wet seeded crops. But this is specifically for peppers and tomatoes and eggplants. And this has enabled us to produce a lot of pepper seed. And actually, Darren, maybe now's a good time to mention, I sent 3 varieties of pepper seed over to Darren to share with you all. And yeah, there you go. Some jalapenos, some pueblo chili, and some corno di toro, which is a Italian sweet pepper. So do you want to say anything about how you might distribute those, or how people might?
I'm gonna keep them all to myself because seeds are so hard to find this year. So I'm selling them for $1 a seed to fund my job for the next 5 years. No. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put them in little seed packs. So I can tell you. So this is, and I don't know if you guys how you can see with my light. Where's my camera? This is the jalapeno, which is gonna be hard to see. This is an early jalapeno. This is some of the Pueblo chiles that Dan was talking about, and then the Corno di Toro, which is that Italian sweet pepper, which you can't see that one. That's just a manila folder. It's kind of boring, but it's one of my favorite peppers to grow, and I can tell you those will definitely do well here at our elevation in short season. So what I'm going to do is for the next day or so, I'm going to just toss it, 20 to 30 seeds in a bunch of seed packs, and then label them and have them at my office. So I'll let my admin know that I may have some pepper growers come in to grab some seeds. I'll just have a box of them in my office. She can either bring them out to you, or you guys can come in my office, whichever one you feel safe doing. These things are packed full. So if you want to grab one for a neighbor or grab one from someone else, I think it'd be awesome to try to get as many of these out, especially that Pueblo Chile. So if you want to try and grab some, would love to have it. And as Dan had mentioned, if you're going to start these indoors, which now is your window, right? So kind of starting these next 2 to 3 weeks is going to be your window to grow these out indoors. There's enough here that if you have some mistakes, feel free to it's okay. You have plenty. Now, if you're not in the Durango area, put your name and the address in the chat box, and we'll send you some. That works. Dan was kind enough to send them to me, so I'm more than willing to try to get them out as far as we can, and we'll go ahead and pay for the postage on them. So Deb had mentioned they have a seed exchange up in the valley. So yeah, Deb, awesome. Would love to get you some of these seeds, and you can give them to the seed exchange. And again, the more spokes we have to this hub, the better.
Nice. That's great, Darren. Thanks. Yeah, I'd love to hear how they do out there, especially that Pueblo chili. Yeah, that early jalapeno really is early. That thing comes on fast. That's probably going to be a good one for you guys down there. But yeah, again, these are all open pollinated. They'll breed true to type, so you can save the seed from them too if you like. Okay, so let's do this little video here of this threshing process, and after we run it through, I can kind of describe what you're seeing.
Go around to the snow.
Noisy. So what you were witnessing there right at the end was a selection process. Okay, we bring all these peppers up onto the slab there, and we let them after cure for a week or so. But we're picking everything basically dead red ripe, right? That's, when the seed is mature that way. And then, we have our own selection criteria. I won't go too far into that. You can, if you start seed saving, you'll develop your own selection criteria. But what we were removing from the population there were the ones that had blunt ends. We were looking for a little bit of point on the end. We're looking for real broad shoulders. That's kind of characteristic of that Pueblo chili, and that really thick meat. And Mike Bartolo was telling me the other day in Rocky Ford, he thinks there's some jalapeno in the lineage of the Pueblo chili. And so once in a while you get these stumpy little Pueblo chilies. And so we're trying to eliminate those from the population all, and just as well as, select for slightly longer. We're kind of looking for a 6-inch chili, really broad on the shoulders, thick meat. Another level of selection would actually be taste tests. But you can imagine that's kind of a grueling experience with these hot peppers. So I haven't ventured there yet. But I think the way Mike does it, he just takes off the tip. He just tastes the tip. And with peppers, most of the heat is up in the top. It's in the veins near where the seeds and the stem are located. Let's see what else. Okay, so that's the wet seeded process. You can process pepper seed dry, like on the right there, and then wet. Now the advantage of doing this wet seeded process is after it comes out of that machine, you saw it was dropping through that little sieve, and we were picking it up and throwing it in a bucket. You add water to that bucket, and then you decant the seed. So it's similar to the way you would deal with tomato seed or cucumber seed. You stir it up vigorously. The good seed sinks to the bottom, and the less viable seed floats to the top, and then you pour that off like 4 or 5 times. And then what you're left is with this just bright, shiny, heavy seed down in the bottom of the bucket, and that's how you get a high germinating seed. Peppers in general do not maintain a very high germination rate. If you have peppers that are 90% germination rate, you're doing great. But federal standards for sale of peppers is as low as 55% because people have trouble producing really high quality seed. So I know, like that Corno di Toro I sent you guys, I know that had like a 90% germ. I think that Pueblo chili is somewhere like a 70% germ. So for you all that plant out some of these seeds, I would plant 2 to 3 seeds per cell, to make sure you get a plant. And then, you can separate them out if they all germinate. Ooh. Okay. Maybe I'll stop there. Any questions about that, the seed processing stuff, dry or wet?
So Dan, real quick
Nope.
before we
Okay.
kind of move on, there was someone trying to pull a question back from before, more about like growing peppers, potential or suggestions about growing peppers in a high tunnel or potentially even a low tunnel, and then thoughts
Yeah.
about direct seeding into a high tunnel. So just some of that kind of season extension protection
Yeah.
recommendations.
Oh yeah, that is, I think the challenge of doing peppers outside there is a great one, but it's going to probably be a little bit of a frustrating one. And take a lot of trial and error. But shoot, in a low tunnel or a high tunnel or a low tunnel within a high tunnel, that would be for sure the way to go if you had that possibility. Yeah, and I'd be totally, if I had a high tunnel there, I'd be totally inclined to try. Maybe do it side by side, just do a little experiment, with the transplanted and the direct sown into the high tunnel to see how they fare. again, the problem with some of these transplants when they don't set those really vigorous root systems is the wind. So in the high tunnel where they're really happy and they don't have much environmental pressure, you're probably going to get some pretty robust plants. I wonder if you might even need to stake some of those, depending on your soil and stuff. But yeah, boy, if you're looking to take these to market and you really want to have something to eat, and you've got a high tunnel, that would be the way to go, I would think. Yeah. All right, moving on. All right, so this slide is just some real basic information about sourcing seed. If you're not going to obviously I wanted to empower everybody to think about saving and adapting and maybe even, breeding your own seed if you're into that. But if you don't have the time or the inclination, here's just some other tips. In the open pollinated and kind of locally grown seed space, you want to identify something that's grown in a similar climate and conditions to yours as possible. So, our farm, for example, is a little bit lower elevation than most of y'all's, but similar latitude, similar, cool nights, there's some similar conditions. And then I would say the same with New Mexico. If you can source seed from northern New Mexico, that would be another good bet. If you can get seed directly from a reputable local farmer, of course, that's always a good idea. We like to see local commerce. And then with your garden centers, if you've got, if you don't really have the space or the bandwidth or the time to start your own plants, consider taking your own seed that you've sourced from a reputable supplier over to your local garden center and maybe have them start some stuff for you. So there's partnerships that can be struck, to get some good quality transplants. One thing that I would for sure avoid is getting pepper plants from Home Depot, Walmart, or any other unknown source like that. And there's some terrible stories from the East Coast here just a couple of years ago. They, I think it was Home Depot or Walmart. One of them had this massive grower who had a mosaic virus, and or no, a blight. It was some kind of blight on the tomatoes. Sold these things all over the eastern seaboard. These things, ruin people's home gardens, and the disease jumped to the production farms and into the commercial potato growers, and it was just this devastating event because they had this, this bad material. So I would just encourage anybody to really stay away from those commercial pepper transplants. And then with these seed companies, we love, we work with 5 seed companies and we love them. They've been good to us and we've got long-term relationships, but a lot of them still just aren't very transparent with where their seed's coming from. And so I put some pressure on them sometimes. They're like, hey, why don't you identify your growers, or, and you as a customer, you should feel free to ask, where's this material coming from? And then there's another one, whatever your other criteria are, there's some really great companies out there. Like I like this this outfit, Southern Exposure Seed Exchange in Virginia, and they just they do some really good work, and there's some other gem of small seed companies out there. It's not just Johnny's. There's and we're seeing more and more sort of regionalized seed companies come online too. So that's, keep your eye on those small outfits. There's a lot of interesting germplasm out there and some folks with some real integrity. Lastly, if you want to get into some of the USDA collections, the pepper germplasm is stored in the Georgia Gene Bank in Griffin, Georgia. And you can request small quantities of pepper seeds. They've got just thousands of sessions of pepper seeds from all 5 of those species, and of course, mostly the anums. But they'll send you a small amount of seed, and you can look at it and try it, and you can study parts of the world that the seed came from. Maybe there's some pepper seeds from the Himalayas that would be appropriate to try. In Dolores or something like that. So that's another interesting resource, where there's going to be a lot of material that's not commercially available. Again, it's very small quantities, but If you're into biodiversity and trying new things, you can look up this GRIN system, USDA ARS, Germplasm Resource Information Network, and you can just type in the botanical name, Capsicum annum, and then you can start to look at all that material, regionally, sweet pepper versus hot pepper, et cetera. And so here, this is my last slide, and this is just some reading material from my friend Chuck Havlick in New Mexico. I just asked him to provide me with, some basic pepper resources, and so sorry to see that they're all coming from Amazon, but I bet you could find them from somewhere other than Amazon too. And then Darren has a copy of my presentation, so if anybody needs to get back in touch with this information, maybe he could link you up with it. And then happy to talk on the phone or email anytime if people want to chat about peppers.
I think Dan's selling himself short. Dan's just not a pepper grower, right? Like, you grow a lot of stuff on that farm. So if you have any questions, he's a great resource for anything. It doesn't have to be just peppers. But and I tell you what, it's always fun to have this historical component to what we have here in the Southwest. I love it. I love to know how to grow peppers, obviously, and tips and tricks on how to grow them. But just that historical perspective is so absolutely cool. And how many generations and where you find them and where you see them, and folks like Dan and other growers in the Rio Grande and down there in the Pueblo area who are just trying to keep the same races and same types, just these OP varieties, just still in production. And folks like Mike Bartolo, who now that Mike's hopefully retired, he doesn't have an excuse to not come down here and give a talk. So I'm so excited to have Mike here. And Dan had that slide about books. Do read up on this stuff. I got a Peppers of the Americas book that I absolutely love. I see, Mary Jackson 5, 6, 10 years ago gave me a garlic testament, right? One of these great books on growing garlic. And I've never been we're all nerds on this call. So it's always fun to be like, oh man, how can you read a whole book about garlic in one night? But we do it, right? They get you hooked on, like the old Milagro Beanfield War from John Nichols on how to grow beans in northern New Mexico. And, so this historical component to what Dan talks about, you feel his passion, you feel his, that connection to people before him. And hopefully he's, passing this on to all the people on his farm. So thank you, Dan. Like, it's been an absolute treat for me. And based off the comments on the chat box, I'm not alone on this.
Right on.
Just real quick, I'm going to get back to here. What about, getting back to the, just some cultural practices. What do you guys do for spacing in field?
Yeah, so, we do about 15 inches between all of our pepper plants. And a lot of that is that's what our transplanter is set up for. I think you could pack them in, more like 12 inches, and there might be some advantage to doing that also. But also I just, I think that extra spacing, especially because we're only irrigating every 9 days, we give them a little extra room, right? They can enjoy a little more water. But I think more of the conventional growers, they plant a lot tighter. I think most people are probably more like 12 to 14 inches, on those Pueblos. Now, like the anchos, for example, that's a whole nother cat. Those are big plants. And so they need more like 18 or 20 inches.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on a lot of that. I agree. I put my jalapenos at like 10 to 12 inches just because sometimes it saves me from staking them, so they kind of like support each other a little bit if they do get too heavy. But then if you see like a Serrano, which gets the same thing, leggy and big and kind of wild, you plant on 12 inches, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. And then what do you grow for sweet peppers?
Yeah, so we talked about the cross-pollination between peppers, and so this is a limiting factor for us. We can only separate 3 peppers per year, so it's always a little bit of a painful decision. You know, Pueblo chili always occupies one of those spots for us, and then we rotate the other two spots. And so, you know, if I have one sort of lamentation, it's that we can't grow, you know, more diversity of peppers. But on the sweet side, that Corona orange bell pepper, we started growing that about 5 years ago for this company I mentioned, Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, because it was recommended by a pepper breeder, a guy from North Carolina, really accomplished guy. He said, listen, that's the best orange, or that's the best colored bell in the open pollinated category I've ever seen. And so I just took that guy at his word, and I got some of that seed in, and we have just loved it. It's prolific, it's tasty, beautiful. There's a little bit of variation in the fruit, but it's also got that beautiful canopy. So, you know, we don't have a big market for it, like on the seed side, but it's just such a winner that that we've been running with it. So that's probably my favorite of all the sweet peppers. The King of the North, I mentioned this red pepper. That one's really popular. You know, we just contract that one out a lot because people with shorter seasons can grow it. But again, I don't like it because of its leaf canopy. The Corte
I've tried to
Toro's a
grow
good
that
one.
here and struggled with it just because
Ah,
I don't get enough leaf production at 6,500. I just get scald on that top side of the fruit.
yeah,
But
yeah,
again, if I can see a shorter season at lower elevation, but it's tough with our intense sunlight. Maybe under the high tunnel, right? Maybe throw a little shade cloth on there or
yeah,
something, and you could potentially get away with it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good comment. I think, you know, the other one that have not grown yet, but I've just been dying to try are some of these other Italian frying peppers, you know, these stuffing peppers like the giant Marconis and ram's horn. And, you know, some of that stuff is really intriguing to me. But I just, because of our isolations, I haven't had an opportunity to do it.
Any other comments or questions? You guys are more than welcome to unmute yourself if you need to instead of the chat box. It's always nice to hear voices. If you have a question, I'll leave a couple seconds here for a pause to see if anybody has one.
Dan,
Dan,
I heard Deb Paulson first, so Deb, go ahead.
Dan, do you do farm tours ever?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. We didn't do any this last year, but we're hoping to this year. Yeah. Yeah.
Let Darren know so he can get the word out to us. Okay.
Okay.
If
Okay.
you follow
Sounds
Dan
good.
on
Yeah, well,
follow Dan on social media, you'll see that he's also apparently a good cook. So if you play your cards right, maybe you'll get dinner out of the farm tour.
pretty funny.
yeah, well, come
Steven?
for the Chili Fest.
Dan, I had a quick question about drip irrigation. If you have drip irrigation and you can have controlled light frequent irrigations with drip, do you see any problem with that as opposed to your less frequent surface irrigation? I was thinking of like twice a week drip irrigation. Do you see any inherent problem in that light frequent irrigation approach?
No, I don't. I think it's that same rule of thumb with drip. You know, you just have to water more frequently. And the other thing, I am just not an advocate for this plastic mulch, but if you really want to grow peppers at elevation, that might be also something to look at, is just a drip and plastic mulch setup.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
I always feel like with drip, just make sure that it's percolating down through that soil profile, or else you get a relatively shallow root system.
Mm-hmm.
Peppers don't know, especially some of the smaller peppers, they don't know when to stop producing. So you get such a heavy fruit load that plant will tip or just keel over on the side because that root system just can't hold it up.
Very good.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks, everybody.
Any other questions for Dan? All right. Well, I'm going to go eat a bowl of Pueblo green chili in your honor tonight. So I'm excited for that. I have my last bag of Mirasol's in the freezer that I'm going to bust out. So thank you, Dan, for taking your time. I know you're busy right now, season starting. So the 55 plus people that were on this call, really just appreciate it. And expect to be called back sometime in the next couple of years for sure, in person.
Yeah, thanks. You guys.
Thank
Thanks
you,
again,
Dan.
and have a great season. Yep. All right.
All right, all take care.